All right, a little shop update. So as you can see, I have the Java build up on the bike lift. The frame is powder coated and I'm pretty excited. It's coming out awesome. The color, I wasn't too sure about at first, but it's really starting to grow on me. And I think it's pretty unique from all the other stuff that I've done in the past. I typically do like a darker frame or a neutral color frame, something that ties into the paint color so that the frame kind of gets lost and your main pieces like the gas tank or the seat kind of stand out alongside of it. In this case, this is a bright color frame, and I think the CB550 really lends itself to a really good looking frame that if you do add some color, like you're gonna be stoked with. Some frames have like weird, mounts for your shocks or a weird tab that's coming off in a weird direction, and it can kind of like ruin the visual lines of a motorcycle, but in this case it's really good. So the paint color is called a almond cream, and it's from a company called Prismatic Powders. They just make powder coat, and I ordered 3 pounds of the stuff and then sent it to my powder coater to have him do it here locally. Now, I didn't do any clear coat, anything like that, because this stuff is super heavy duty, and I shouldn't need to put a clear coat on it, but it's a really cool color. So I just wanted to talk about some of the stuff that I put into this bike so far. Starting at the front end, it's got a brand new wheel, brand new rim, spokes. The hub has brand new bearings, and all of the retainers, the things that hold the bearings in, are all brand new. Moving on to the front brake, it's got a brand new disc brake, and then the stock front brake caliper. Now the stock front brake caliper, they can get pretty crusty and they look like absolute garbage when you pull them out of a box that's been sitting for the last 20 years. But they can be reworked and really polished up so that they look awesome, and they also work pretty decent. They're not the best they're not the best caliper. Like, you're still working with 40-year-old tech, but it will stop the bike. Now, all brand new hardware in there, brand new seals, brand new brake line. That thing is ready to go. Now, the internals inside of the forks are all brand new as well. Brand new springs, brand new seals, retainers, bolts, everything that you can replace inside of the fork is replaced. And then I think what kind of adds to the whole front end is the use of the boots. Now, some of the stock bikes used to have the boots on them, but these ones are a little bit wider, and they add a little bit more visual, like it just makes the fork look a little bit beefy in the front, which I think is cool and really caters to this style of bike. The triple clamp is completely stock, literally did not touch it other than powder coat it. And then I have some pretty cool handlebars that I've been having to move around my shop for the last 5 years, in my garage, whatever, that I just found, and they look really good on this bike. Now I might get them re-chromed just because there's some like pitting and scratching and stuff, but the shape of them is awesome. The bend kind of really goes with the theme of the bike. Moving backwards a little bit, brand new coils. I don't mess around with the stock stuff anymore, but those things are pretty robust in stock form. It's just that when you go to start up the bike and then you realize that cylinder number 1's not firing and you have to chase it back through the wiring harness and everything, you really, for the most part, find out that the coil is starting to go. So I just get rid of that problem right away and use brand new coils, brand new spark plug lines, and brand new spark plugs, obviously. Moving on to the engine is completely stock. I went with a stock displacement because I'm looking for reliability out of this bike. It's more of an aesthetically looking bike than it is performance, and stock is the most reliable. So went with a stock piston. All the bearings were replaced. Everything that I could replace in the engine was replaced, and that thing should run like a sewing machine. Moving on to the carburetors. The carburetors are just vapor blasted and rebuilt. Now, there's one thing I wanted to mention about the rebuild kits for the one thing I wanted to talk about with the carburetors is that if you've been trying to build one of these bikes or you've been on some of the parts, websites, you're probably gonna come across a listing that says CB550 carb rebuild kit, and it has everything that you need in the kit. I've ran into some very serious issues with those, and it almost made me quit building bikes a couple times. For instance, on Amber 2, which is that chrome bike, I did everything, literally replaced everything, every jet, all of that, used one of those rebuild kits, and I just couldn't get a sputter out of the mid-range, probably about half throttle. There was like this little hesitation, and I did everything. I chased all the wiring, I looked at the points, I looked at the condensers, I looked at everything, and finally got back to the carburetor, went up and down in jet sizes from the pilot to the main, and went up and down in clip position from the needle to try to figure out and rule out what was going on in the carburetor. What ended up happening was I got to the point where I just threw all the stock jets back in, including the needles, and the problem went away. Now, I know it was the needle because the needle is what controls your mid-range of power. If you were to look at like throttle position compared to what jet pushes fuel when, your pilot is gonna be like your idle and probably a quarter throttle. So like at idle, your pilot jet is pulling fuel up and it's going into the cylinder head. When you crack the throttle, the pilot jet then shifts from the pilot circuit and into your needle circuit. Now the needle circuit kind of works, it has a taper, right? And the needle, as it comes up, that hole gets bigger and bigger and bigger, not physically, but the passage gets bigger and bigger because the taper is being pulled out of the hole. And at half throttle, that circuit is what's supplying fuel to the engine. Now, if that taper's wrong, then you're gonna get a weird hesitation, or if it's a race bike and you're trying to move the power around in a certain way, or if it's too lean at mid throttle or half throttle, then you would play around with the taper on the needle. Now, what was happening is that taper was a little bit too lean from top to bottom. So no matter what I did, even if I pushed the clip all the way down on the needle to bring the needle up in the hole, it was still way too lean and I was getting a sputter. And I found out that it was the needle. So I put the stock ones back in and it was perfectly fine. Just be wary of that because it'll drive you insane, and you'll be chasing that issue for a long time if you didn't know that could happen. So enough on that, but moving back to the battery box. Now the battery box is something that I designed and manufacture. If you haven't already, check it out on the website. It's a pretty cool solution, and it saves you so much time when you're trying to put electrical components around the bike. Now the battery box in this case mounts the regulator rectifier to the back, and then the starter solenoid is on the right-hand side. All of your components are right there, and it's a very clean and simple solution if you're gonna be able to mount it in that rear triangle that is in the back. Now, this bike in particular is gonna have side covers on it, and the side cover tabs may look like they are in the stock position, but what I actually did was cut them off and push them into the frame a little bit so that the side covers sit deeper into the frame, and from the back, you have a thinner looking profile. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the stock position, it's just that if you're going for a thinner bike, or in my case, the exhaust is gonna be running directly alongside of that, I needed to create some clearance from the side cover to the exhaust, so I did it by moving them in. The shocks are shocks that I got from 4-in-1. They're pretty cool because they're adjustable. They go up like a ½ inch if you need it, but overall the bike is completely stock in ride height. So the fork isn't messed with and the shock isn't messed with. This bike is gonna be a little bit higher than some of the other bikes that I've done, but it really looks nice. I think it's a great balance with the black shock and then the black fork boot at the front. It balances the bike in a way where your color palette and all of the little like silver trim pieces kind of like you're trying to achieve balance when you are building a bike. And I think that leading the viewer's eye with some of these pieces that are gonna pop, like the exhaust or the basket on the end, which only has one side on right now, you're kind of leading and visually telling the viewer where to look. And I think that's extremely important when you're trying to design a motorcycle. So yeah, that's the rundown of the monster build. The next thing that I need to do is build the wiring harness. And I've been paying attention to this company on Instagram called Race Spec for quite some time now. Now they build some of the most insane wiring harnesses that you've ever seen. Harnesses for F1, MotoGP, Cup cars, some of the most high-end racing applications that you've ever seen. So I really take inspiration from them. That doesn't mean I'm gonna build a F1 spec'd wiring harness for this bike. It's just not necessary. There's not enough components, and it doesn't need to be to that level, but I will do it to a high level. I think the wiring is extremely important, and you don't wanna run into issues where you are on the side of the road trying to figure out why the bike won't start because you used a cheap connector or you crimped it wrong and the wire fell out. So look for that video. That's gonna be coming up in the next couple weeks. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update. Thank you for everyone who subscribes and follows. I really appreciate it. It helps me to make these videos and continue to do what I'm super passionate about. So thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And until next time, see ya.